Good morning, and welcome to another week of Journey with Christ. I'm your host, Mark Mitchell, preaching minister here at the Park Avenue Church of Christ in Charleston, West Virginia. And I'm joined from his extended trip, I'd say abroad, but he did kind of go out of country. He went to Nashville.
Even further, went to Arkansas.
Yeah, he via Arkansas, yeah. Steve Fox, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fine. Weather's nice, really pretty.
Oh, yeah, it's raining today.
Oh, yeah. I'll take it.
We're recording on Monday, just so you know.
I apologize for not being here for the last 2 weeks. I had an important assignment to do. We had to go to Nashville to see Laurel, our granddaughter, graduate from high school. And it was the first time in a long time that all three of my kids and all three of my grandchildren were at the same place at the same time, and we all slept in the same house.
Wow.
So my dad used to say, you make me happy twice, once when you get here and once when you leave.
Mm-hmm.
I've never felt that way about my 10 grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish they'd stay there all the time. And we were really proud of Laurel because at Good Pasture High School in Nashville, she was valedictorian.
Mm.
Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Valedictorian, yeah.
So we know where it didn't. Her intelligence didn't go.
When I was in high school, I couldn't spell valedictorian better. And so that's the first time that's happened in forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was a great trip, and I love Nashville, and I love Arkansas, Searcy, Arkansas. It takes you a while to get there, but if you're thinking about where you want to go to college, I could not suggest to you a better place than our university in Searcy, Arkansas. Or as the kids from Lipscomb say, hardly college from scarcely Arkansas.
Yes. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Well, we do apologize for not being here. I had a lot of things going on. I guess I could have filled in, and I said I would, but I didn't. So you can be angry with me, but I apologize. I'm sorry. But we are back. We are going to get back into our lesson. We left off, if we're able to remember exactly, 2 weeks ago, we left off with understanding the authority of who decides what. And the last time we talked a little bit from Mark 10 about some various difficult topics, didn't we? Wasn't it divorce?
We talked about divorce and remarriage. You throw that out on the table at a preacher's luncheon and then get back out of the way because there are many different views. Basically what we wanted to do a couple weeks ago is just to say, the world has said to us, you can leave whenever you want to, you can get divorced whenever you want to, it doesn't make any difference. Well, it does make a difference, and God gives some biblical principles and ideas about what a person should, when someone's divorced, it should be for particular reasons.
You know, the thing is this, we're using this study as an example of some of the things Jesus taught, and marriage divorce is one of those difficult that as we as believers among the various different churches have had many disagreements and many misunderstandings, hurt feelings, wrecked lives because of some of this stuff. But here's I think the underlying point all of us need to get. God decides what's right and what's wrong, not us. Mm-hmm. And if we can learn to cope and deal with that, we'll be much better off, because we're about to go through many different things where God decides who has the authority to say this is okay and this is not okay, not us. And that's part of the very statements that Jesus makes it before he ascends. All authority has been given to who? Him.
Matthew 28.
You know, he's the one who decides, ultimately.
You know, there have been a lot of occasions, I won't mention names, But there have been a lot of occasions in my ministry where, you know what changes a person's belief about divorce? One of their kids get a divorce.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that awful, horrible thing is something that we got to help our son or daughter.
Yeah, we got to work through the healing process of the hurt and the pain, not the judgment and
We
condemnation.
should do that with everybody.
We should do that with everything that we deal with. And this week we're going to be we're going to be in Mark 10 for a few weeks, I believe. Steve has picked out verses 42 of Mark 10 through 45. And I'm going to be reading from that.
Now, wait a minute, I didn't give you the authority to read that.
Well, you told me to.
I know, I said I didn't give you the authority to do that.
No.
Hey, if you can't run with the big dogs, get out. What is that? Stay on the board.
See. Mark 10, verses 42 through 45. And this is right after James and John have asked to sit on the left and right side of Jesus. So there's a little bit of stuff going on here that is personal. It'd be like if two brothers deciding who's number one at something. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be a slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." You think you could build a monument there and hang out for a while?
Mm-hmm.
I believe you could build a house and never leave.
Mm-hmm. These are principles that the vast majority of people in the world don't have a clue.
No, these 4 verses literally set the tone, the attitude, the direction of the heart, the direction of the actions of your life, the way your faith works. It decides everything. And if you don't get this, I don't know if you can get any of it.
Your life's going to be tough if you don't figure that. From the time you're born, you're trying to figure out who has the authority in my life. Do I listen to what my peers are telling me? Do I listen to what my teachers are telling me? Every day we make decisions about who has the authority in my life and how am I going to deal with that.
Well, even more specifically, given the context of 42 through 45, people want to be on top. Jesus says, take yourself to the bottom. That's the only way you can make it to the top. And when everything else in our world, in our culture, it says you can hurt, destroy, do anything you want as long as you make it to the top. That's all that matters.
By the very definition of authority, we've seen a lot of the misuse of authority in the world, in the United States the last couple of years, when people just do what they want to do. If they want to go out and go in the streets and steal stuff. I can't believe, you see this over and over and over again when it comes to whose authority are you living by. Hey guys, did you hear they broke into that store down there? I hear glass. Let's go get a TV.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten in the world to where I don't care about other people's authority. I'm going to do what I want to do. And when you have to deal with that, there's not too many ways to solve it.
Well, there is, and there's a nature that seems to be in every one of us, that we want to, first of all, to be in charge. We want to decide what's right and what's wrong. We want to tell others what they need to do with their lives, not even when they're not even asking. We'll come up and say, hey, you don't want to do it that way. Well, how do you know? Well, I know you don't want to do it that way. Everything is a pursuit of power, and that's basically what Jesus says in the very first verse. You know, you regard as the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Jesus is saying in a very nice way, they like being in charge, and they really enjoy doing it.
They really do. Let me ask you something. If you're walking down the street and you see a $100 bill laying on the sidewalk, what's your first thought?
Somebody lost a $100 bill.
Oh, that's not what I was looking for. My first thought is, I wonder if I could take that without anybody knowing.
There was a time in my life that was my first thought,
Oh,
yeah.
so I got to work on that because I'm going back to your past life. Oh, man. Oh, that's okay. There are many qualities that I follow that belong to you. But most people would think,
Oh, man. I got $100.
I got $100 because, you know, you look around, there's nobody else around.
No.
So, and then there are other people who would make a very, very strong effort to find out who that belonged to.
Well, I'll tell you what I've had to do in times past.
My opinion is that's the authority. You're either using your authority or something else that somebody taught you.
Exactly. There was a time in my life when I had the get to the top any way possible, serve me. I was number one. That person saw that $100 was just would reach down, pick it up, put it in his pocket, and just not even miss a stride. I was real good at picking that up. But life and God had lessons to teach.
Okay, let's advance the example a little bit. It's $200. What are you going to do with it? You can go it up to $1,000 if you want to.
If you want to, yes, you can. But again, the lessons I've learned in life tells me that's not my money.
And those lessons came about because principles.
Authority taught me that my pursuits of what was important was not important. You know.
I think we both agree exactly what we should do.
Yeah.
Exactly when we see a $100 bill laying on the sidewalk.
That's right. You need either.
I know people in our church. If somebody, let's say somebody walked out of the church building, walked out of the lobby, and dropped a $100 bill, there's not one person in that church where we worship that would pick that up and put it in their pocket.
No.
They would make an effort, a strong
To find
effort
out who lost their $100. Yeah. Absolutely. And that needs to be, and that's just the attitude you have with, not even with money, but honestly, money is generally the most telling.
Yeah, we want to possess that more than anything else.
Anything else.
Even a boat.
Yeah.
Or a new fishing rod.
Now stop. Now you're meddling.
Not meddling.
Now you're
I
meddling.
got it written right here in my notes. Meddle with mark.
But don't you think that there's two, first of all, there is the authority, but also in the verses 42 through 45, Jesus is saying, you have to empty yourself completely. I mean, not only do you don't have the authority, but you don't even have, you shouldn't have the, what you're pursuing is the least amount of authority. Mm-hmm. You want to empty yourself completely.
There's a great feeling of freedom when you do that. If you're working in a business where there's 20 people working in the store and there's one owner, and he walks around all day making sure everybody knows he's the owner, that's his quest for authority. But if he allows other people in that situation to be able to take on some of that authority, there's a great sense of freedom when you do that.
Yeah.
And here the mom was saying, one son on my left, one son on your left, one son on your right. How about if we just take control? That's what she's asking for.
Well, part of it, I was just thinking when you said that, in that business that you just described, the owner and then all the workers,
All the flunkies.
all of them positioning themselves to be next in line behind him. At the very bottom is probably a janitor, custodian, might even be a delivery truck driver, who goes home every day with a smile on his face, who has no ambition, is perfectly happy to be at the bottom. That is the attitude that Jesus is saying. It's not that there's anything wrong with owning the business, but you need to have the same attitude as that person who owns the business, as the one who's just thankful to have a job. There was a man in Lubbock, Texas, who at Sunset Church of Christ, who was a very wealthy man, owned a lot, but he lived like the custodian. His car was one of the oldest cars that was in the parking lot. And I remember looking at it like, oh, he's rich? Seriously? They say, oh yeah, he's rich. But he was the most generous man. He never passed anybody who thought they needed something. He wouldn't reach in his pocket and give them.
You can't outgive God.
And that's literally what he said. He said, God blessed me. All I'm doing is just passing it on. How many people in the world are like that?
Not too many.
Not too many.
And when we get down to these two scriptures about possession, we will find it. When Jesus says here, it's not for me to say who sits on my right or sits on my left, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared. There are all kinds of different situations where there are different organizations, different companies, different businesses, where somebody is in charge and makes all the rules about everything. And you can't even give your opinion about something or say, let's do it another way. They're in charge. And that's what this mom wants for these two boys. When the kingdom gets here, we'll make 2 vice presidents. We'll have Jesus as the authority, but we'll make 2 vice presidents, and James and John. And then when they hear that, when the other apostles hear that, did you remember what you read in there? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Well, we didn't read that part. I only read 42 through 45.
No, yeah, okay. Well, and hearing this, the 10 began to feel indignant.
Yeah.
We don't use that word very much.
No.
Oh, you should have seen her. She was indignant. I don't know what that means. It means angry. It means just mad. And here's your...
It means standing there like this with the frown on your face thinking, how dare you?
Gritting your teeth.
Yeah. How dare you?
Well, it says he felt indignant toward the other 10 felt indignant towards James and John. There are 2 times in the Gospels where Jesus is referred to as being indignant. This is one of them. Mm-hmm. You know what the other one is? Mm-mm. When they were calling him to come and heal the children, and they told him to get away.
Yeah.
Because they told the parents of the children to get away, because Jesus doesn't have that much time for it. He's got to go do important things. He's got people to see and things to do, and so get him away from the kids. And it says in the Gospels, it says Jesus was indignant. He just wanted to go sit down and have those kids sit on his lap and tell them stories or play games with them or whatever. Mm-hmm. So there's such a definition of this word that we like it. You know, if I go home to my kids and grandkids every night and say, I have the authority around here, and they say, yeah, we know that, Dad. We know that, Grandpa. I'd feel pretty good. But then when it's carried out in a practical way, well, can I make some of my own decisions? No, because I'm the authority here. I will tell you what to do. Have you ever heard, my house, my rules? Whew. When it's got to my house, my rules, the authority question is pretty messed up.
Yeah. Well, every family has a dynamic of which they operate in. God has given us some insight into roles some things are done together. Some things are done with someone who's ultimately sort of like Harry Truman. The buck stops here. We all are, first of all, held accountable for our own selves anyway. So we do have some of our own internal authority going on, and from that place it moves out. To get to the place to where authority is a drug is the point where Jesus is always trying to keep you away from. Much like money, there's never enough if that's what you want. If there's power, there's never enough. If it's authority, there's never enough. Whatever it may be, if it's pleasures, if it's lust, if it's for some people it's food. If it's what you want, there's never enough. And Jesus says, empty yourself of everything.
And become a servant.
Become a servant. Do not be the one who is greedy for whatever it may be, whether it be power, authority, money, whatever. Empty yourself. And use it just as a tool.
And in connection with our topic, in our society, we're taught you climb up that ladder.
Yeah.
And the more you climb up that ladder, the more powerful you are, the more authority you have. And if you got to step on somebody, or if you got to knock somebody off the ladder,
yeah, it's okay.
Right,
yeah.
Because you're fixing in your mind what you want to do, and then you go out and do it.
All that matters is winning. Mm-hmm. All that matters is being number one on top.
As long as everybody gets a participation trophy. What'd you win this for? I was here.
I showed up.
Oh, man.
And I got my picture taken to prove it.
And I got a free Gatorade afterwards.
Yeah.
You want to say anything else about what Jesus said, my right and my left in the kingdom?
No.
Okay. I will give you authority to read.
Well, I do have something else I want to say about verse 45.
Well, do it.
For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus gives us a definition of what this emptying of yourself absolutely looks like. All of us know that we're unable to live the life of Jesus, but we understand what that looks like. Mm-hmm. We see by his actions the fact that he was God himself, who humbled himself and become a human, that he didn't come here for everyone to come up to him and kiss his ring and bow down to his feet. No, he was the one who picked up the basin of water and a cloth and wash other people's feet.
And the opposite of that is the millions of times in our world and in our generation where I'm going to show my authority and my power over you.
Right.
So you come and do those good things to me, but I don't have to do anything for you.
That's right.
I'm the one who's in charge. I'm the one who has the authority and the power.
I honestly believe, Steve, that it very well may be the case. So this is one of those scriptures that I hang a lot of weight on as far as it determines, you talk about salvation scriptures, salvation issues. This is one of those, for me, salvation scriptures. I honestly believe Jesus kind of demands that you imitate this attitude. Because I don't think if you can not have this attitude and live out your faith in Jesus Christ. I think it's impossible. If everybody has to serve you and you don't serve, I don't see how you make it. I really don't.
Let's chase Alice in Wonderland just for a minute. What does this mean? And to give his life as a ransom for many.
Yeah. Well,
Why does it not say to give his life as a ransom for all?
because not all are going to be able to give up being number one in their life. They're not going to become servants. They want to have the authority. And even giving your life to Jesus, isn't it? You're saying, okay, I'm going to become the servant. Jesus is now the authority.
It's kind of hard to understand when you're 12 or
It is.
14, but that's the goal.
But that's where, as an adult, as a follower of Jesus Christ, that's where the path leads. That you, at some point, decide what I want is not the most important thing. What Jesus wants is.
I met a man at Elkview 40 years ago, and he told me this story about a conversation he had with a guy. They had a little bit of trouble in their church, and some people left. So the next time he saw this guy downtown, like a year later, he said, well, how you doing over there at the church? He said, we're doing okay. He said, who's the leader down there at that church? And he said, oh, they killed him 2,000 years ago.
I loved it.
You can have that attitude that, he is my master and I'm going to try my darndest to be his servant. And that doesn't mean that you're a servant in every aspect of your life, because somebody may want to serve you.
That's right.
And you allow them to do that.
Yeah, I remember, when these thoughts and these ideas and concepts started entering my brain, and God's dealing with me, and I'm relearning what my authority is, what God's authority is, and where my goals should be, reorientating myself. I remember that I constantly was always trying to help other people, and I was beginning to take quite a bit of pride in it. The humble, I wanted to wear my humble badge.
But they took it away from you.
They took it away from me. Somebody came up to me to do something for me, and I wouldn't let them. My friend looked at me and said, now you're taking away their grace from them.
And look,
you need to let them. You need to let them do it.
Look how that concept would change so many of our relationships. Domestic violence, most of the time that's who has power and who has control.
That's right.
Child abuse, that's who has power and
who has control.
And if most of us would take on the mind of a servant like Jesus suggests, we wouldn't be dealing with things like that are hurtful, where people are trying to find out who has the power and who has control.
Well, you take it all the way back to what Jesus taught in the Sermon on the Mount: do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Isn't that simple? It is so simple.
But practically impossible for that to sink in.
The world doesn't see that simplicity. The world sees
victims, weaknesses.
Yes, weaknesses, climbing the ladder. You don't care who you hurt. That's what society usually says.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference between what Jesus taught and what the world says to us. You want to try to shoot for another one?
I don't know, Steve. We're at 30 minutes.
I say,
listen,
I'll tell you what. I give you the authority to stop this class.
Okay. Well, actually, I really enjoy these, because this one here, if I was looking around at the world and thinking, okay, what does the world need more than anything? Honestly, what the world needs to hear is that they're not the end decision of anything that has to do with right and wrong. God is. If we can ever get that, God is the authority of everything. If we can get that, decisions will become so much easier. We live in a world society now that's, we've got conflict over definitions of sex of definitions of right and wrong, who can do what, who can be what. I mean, our world is in a roundabout way flipped its lid.
Something about going somewhere in a handbasket. I can't remember.
It doesn't even make the outer gate in that case because it's burnt up. But this is definitely a topic, Steve, that I think that we could definitely learn.
We had, when I was at Canal City, we had two sisters, Mary and Goldie, and they were both in their 30s. They were probably now in their 50s. But when I thought of authority and power, I always thought of those two, because I'd stop somewhere in Canal City and say, "You need a ride?" "No, that's okay." Well, I said, "Come on, get in, I'll give you a ride." "No, that's okay." These two girls had no power and no authority over anybody. But they are two of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. It just demonstrated, and I'm sure they felt conscious about it. They felt like, okay, I'm going to do that today. I don't think they changed their mind a lot. But when you see a person like that who wants to be a servant and who has doesn't have a concept of it, but knows exactly what it is and says, "I don't want a part of that."
Well, you know, the irony is Jesus never asked for people to give. He didn't demand authority from them, but they gave him their authority. It is one thing to be the person, because we know a lot of people who are great leaders, and generally the very best of leaders never acts like they're in charge.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
They generally, they just go do something, and next thing you know, there's 100 people following them. That's a leader.
That's a leader.
A leader is not someone who tells everybody what to do.
Get in line and do what I tell you.
Yeah, that's not a leader. That's a dictator. There is a huge difference between the two.
A lot of countries in this world are following that format.
Yes. Leaders lead. And generally, leaders are the first one on their hands and knees doing what needs to be done.
I heard a man say one time about the eldership. Rocky said, being an elder is easy. You just figure out which way the crowd's going, you jump in front of them. That was his power. That was his authority.
I love Rocky.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Steve, that's where we'll be this week. Next week, we'll be looking at possessions, authority there. And Steve has picked out some verses for us there to discuss.
I would like for you to think this week about... I'd like for you to think about that. I'd like for you to think about what your life would be if you listened to the world instead of listening to Christ. How would your life be different if you live by the authority of the world is telling us, advertising is telling us every day the way we ought to think, because you need this. And so what would your life be like if you really started studying the authority and the concept of control that comes with the life of the Messiah?
Well, having that thought, we will end this week. On behalf of Steve and I, God bless and have a great week, and we'll see you next week. See ya!